Welcome back to the studio today. So we are still continuing the paint along. I was so tempted to finish certain areas and then edit it so that you see them finished, like I did in my portrait painting tutorials. But then I remembered that this is a painting that is intended for you to follow along with me. So just know that in my usual portrait painting tutorials, I don't show every step of the way just because that would be an extremely long video, as this one is. So anyway, so in today's segment of the paint along, we're going to live right here in this little value range on the palette. And if you missed yesterday's video, I would highly suggest you watch yesterday's video so you know how all of these colors were mixed up, and so you know what color palette I'm using. That being said, to continue the paint along, I really have to pick and choose my battles, and I think that, you know what, I'm gonna take you on this journey and push this even further. So we're going to take just a small brush, and I know some of you might hate this, but we're going to take a small brush, and now we're going to start to examine all of these smaller shapes. So in today, you're going to be in close-up view for the majority of the footage. That means you probably won't see too much of the color mixture. So let's just start out without close-up first, and then we'll move into close-up later. So again, this value right here, I'm just kind of moving it, just raising the light a little bit over here. So I'll tell you what, this one is going to be all about subtlety. And really, the fact is, there are so many ways to create a painting. It just so happens that my most realistic paintings have been done using the classical approach. But I know some of you really don't like the classical approach. Some of you really don't want to sit there and do a transfer drawing and all of that stuff. So not that there's anything wrong with the classical approach. It's just that why don't we try to achieve the same level, if not more, with this painting as we have done with the ones using the classical approach. But in order to do that, we're really going to want to spend our time now with all of these little shapes. So notice how I'm just kind of adjusting this little edge here for the wing of the nose. So it's going to be a very, very subtle edge here. And tell you what, now I think it would be a good idea to switch into close-up view just so we can start to bring some of these areas to life. So here we are in close-up view. You should have the photo reference there. It might be a little bit smaller now in the top left corner of your screen, but I'm really going to try to show you as much of the kind of the off-camera things that happens to create a realistic image. So the first thing we're going to do, how about we spend quite a bit of time on these forms. And this segment of the video is really dedicated to those of you that want to know how on earth one can push a painting to an extreme level of realism. So that's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead, and it's really something that you can learn. I think that realism in painting is a very learnable thing. As Nelson Shanks would say, this is learnable stuff. It just depends on who we're trying to stuff with the... Oh, never mind. I'm messing it up. Nelson Shanks was quoted saying, it's all knowable stuff. It just depends who we're trying to stuff with the knowables. There we go. Yeah, and I got that from one of the painting videos of the past. One of Nelson Shanks' past painting videos. But anyway, let's look at this form now. Now we're really going to look at each individual form boundary and observe the subtlety within all of those forms. So right around here, see how we have just a simple flat shape? That just isn't going to do it anymore. There's going to be a much lighter shape over here. and that noise you're hearing is this thing. So that is my my maul stick, which is actually a selfie stick. It's just something that I'm leaning my hand on, just so I don't get my hand onto the painting. So this is going to be the really, really slow, quiet, meticulous stuff. You really want a nice cup of tea for this kind of thing. And this is actually really new to me, to be able to push a painting this far without using the classical approach. So it's actually pretty wild that that we can do this. And again, just to show you that you can, there's no one way to create a painting. And if anything, if there's one way to create a painting for you, it's the one that works for you. It just so happens that I tend to be, I'm kind of an explorer of technique. I love to explore different ways to create paintings. So now there's going to be a drop off in value right over here. So again, if you missed the video, yesterday's video and the one before, where I explained what happened with my multiple camera angles and certain lossage of footage, I would highly recommend watching those videos, just so you kind of know what's going on in terms of my filming and the lighting in the studio and all that stuff. But I mean, on my viewfinder or on my camera screen, it looks pretty clear. I mean, I'm not going to know what it looks like until it's editing time, but it looks clear to me. So again, let's go ahead and let's look at this shape here. A little bit more light there. All right, so a little bit of titanium white and ultramarine blue and ivory black gave us this. This is basically the color of the sclera, the white of the eye, but with much more white. Very carefully now. We're observing these little lines of light. So I'll tell you what, I think that I should probably look at the structure of the glabella now and add a little bit more form into it. And I'm going to be just taking right off my palette and adjusting the values as I go. But the hues are going to remain very similar to the hue mixtures you saw yesterday. That is the color mixtures. So it's going to get a little darker here, so we're softening this edge. Now this is the subtlety. And really the best way to learn this subtlety is in drawing, particular graphite drawing with pencil. That's why I like to use a sharp, almost like a sharp point to my brush here. It's kind of like with a pencil, except it's a little bit easier with a pencil because you don't have to mix any colors. It's all about the pressure and the type of pencil you're using. And again, this is another, I guess another term. This is also referred to as a window shading. You choose a little window in the painting to render out. And really, it's about conceptualizing the form, not about copying it. It's all about interpreting visual information, especially in this stage, because again, if I were to try to copy the photo reference, things would get kind of wacky. So essentially, I'm picking and choosing areas that are facing the light less, such as this little plane here that I painted, and I'm making them darker. But I also have to stand back or sit back and relate that darkness to the surrounding shapes. You get used to it. If you're new to painting and you're wondering how on earth am I going to get to that, you'll get used to it. Patience is also something that you build. in painting as well. Now this edge is going to be a little bit softer. Now I'm going to return to the nose, and again the photo reference is flattening it out, so this shape right here, see, that shouldn't be as sharp. Even in the photo reference it's not quite as sharp, so let's just soften it, and I think that's all right for now. So let's go down to, let's say, the mouth. I adjusted my camera ever so slightly just so you can see the mouth a little bit more clear. So a little bit of alizarin permanent. Sorry, you can't really see the mixture with this camera angle. So alizarin permanent and ivory black. More alizarin permanent than ivory black. Now let's go ahead and follow the center line going all the way down here. There. That's going to be the center. Remember, we're following the center line all the way around here. So that's going to be the center point, and it's going to taper over here. It's going to get darker over here. And it's going to get darker over here as the back of the lower lip starts to taper away from us. Just like that. Then darker over here. Remember, more alizarin permanent than cadmium. Sorry, more alizarin permanent than ivory black. I'm getting ahead of myself. We are going to use some cadmium red here in a little bit. Alright, so I'm going to add a little bit of cadmium red now to that mixture. Just a little bit of cadmium red. Just a little bit. Alright, so right over here. It's going to be a much more red area. That's super, super red. And then back to the darker alizarin permanent ivory black mixture. Too dark. That red is going to taper into here. See how quickly we can render out the forms. I'm kind of surprised that I can get this kind of specificity without the classical approach. It's actually the first time I think I've gone this far in a painting recently without using the classical approach. And again, just to show you that there is no one way to create a painting. And if there's one way to create a painting, it's the way that works for you. So with sap green, alizarin permanent, burnt umber, and ivory black. I know I just went through that really quickly. Sap green, alizarin permanent, and ivory black. We have this value right here for the bottom of the mouth. Notice how that needed to get a little bit darker, but now I'm just going to go right into the flesh tones on the palette that you saw me mix yesterday. I'm just going to create a much more subtle edge here. So I'm just looking at all of these shapes surrounding the mouth. So I'm actually noticing that it needs to get a little bit darker here. So that's pretty much just sap green and burnt umber for that area. Now with the same brush, a little bit of cadmium red, knowing that the sap green will help to bring down the intensity of the red. Gonna put in just a little touch there. Super simple. And now I'm just going to clean off the brush a little bit, and I'm going to go into one of the flesh tone colors in the kind of the middle tone, but lighter middle tone region of the palette. Again, the colors you saw me mix yesterday. Very sharp there, but softer as it tapers away. So softer over here. And then a little bit more light right into here. And again, I'm going to try to show you as much of the footage as possible. That's why I'm splitting up these videos into even more segments. Probably going to change up the titles to these videos just so it's not the same thing it's been, just with a different number. For instance, this one's definitely going to be about subtlety. Or something like that. A little bit brighter there. And then there's going to be a little bit of a drop off, so a little bit of sap green into the flesh tones. A little bit of a drop off in value here. So you want to make this value very subtle, but it's a little less subtle than the, say, the values around here. See that? And that's how you describe more planes in the face. Let's say a little more light right there. And now I'm going to get into a little bit of the kind of the middle tone region of the palette with a little bit of cadmium red medium. All into here, just to create a kind of sharper edge and a much cleaner gradation of value. Tell you what's helping me a lot right now in this stage of the painting is the value scale on my palette. Make sure to keep that value scale on your palette. I just moved the camera so I could show you. This is the value scale that I'm talking about. See how close these puddles are to one another? I'm not really spending much time mixing anymore, so much as just taking right from this little, these little puddles. So this is going to be a lighter middle tone region of the palette. And I have the camera extremely close to the painting now, so I can try to get the highest quality shot possible. Right into here, there's going to be a little more light. And we're going to start to develop some more structure. So again, this is intended for you to follow along and paint with me. So now we're going to approach another subtle area. So I think that this dark shape here is actually a little bit of a cast shadow from the eyelashes. But it wouldn't make sense if the eyelashes weren't there. So yeah, let's do it. Let's paint the eyelashes. Eyelashes, what am I using? Whatever dark color I'm getting off my palette. But for you, say a little bit of burnt umber, ultramarine blue. Maybe more burnt umber than ultramarine blue. See that? Very, very simple. I really hope my camera's in focus. I'm looking at the viewfinder. It looks like it's in focus, so hopefully it's in focus. Don't want to get overexcited there with the eyelashes. Just a few little shapes for that, and that should be all that I'll need. Now I'm going to get something darker from the middle tone region of the palette, throwing in some sap green. It's going to be a much more specific shape here. See that? A little bit more of a specific shape there, delineating the bottom plane of the lower eyelid. I mean, I think that this is better for the paint along, actually, because you can see with much more detail what I'm actually doing. A bit softer there. And I'm just using kind of an intermediate value just to soften that out. So there's going to be a little plane right over here. And you really, really want to be careful with that edge. You want a very clean shape for that, and you really want, what is this? I'm using a size 1 round brush. Master's Touch brand. Brand doesn't really matter as long as it's a small round brush that can hold paint. Now we're going to push this light a little more. Right into here. And let's add a little more light. So just basically going right into the lighter area of the palette. I'm so focused, even talking shakes my hand. I have to keep my hand very straight for these areas. So there's going to be a little bit of a bridge right beneath the tear duct, for lack of better term, right here. Right there. So that's going to be kind of a bridging value, or a value that's kind of a bridge between one form, this one, and another form, this one. And you want this bridge, you want this value for the bridge to be very subtle. Subtle, yet in between here and here. So again, just lighter value to soften this transition, even lighter now. I mean, look at the amount of specificity we're getting into this eye now. It's wild. And we didn't even use the classical approach. That's crazy. So again, even more subtlety here. But of course, that's not subtle enough. So let's get something lighter. And lighter. This is wild. I didn't know I could get this kind of subtlety without the classical approach. A little bit more light into there, just to kind of get more of a soft edge. So I'm thinking that I'm going to want to add a little bit more warmth. So the cadmium red medium, titanium white, right into here. And then just cleaning the brush off with Oderless mineral spirits. I'm gonna just, with a clean brush with a little bit of thinner. See, I can't even speak now, I'm so focused.